You ever watch a congressional hearing and think, man, this feels less like politics and more like a full-on pay-per-view event? Because that's exactly what happened when Senator Peter Welch decided he'd had enough of Kash Patel allegedly flying around the country on a taxpayer-funded FBI jet like it was the world's most exclusive frequent flyer punch card. And look, Americans are used to government drama. We see it every day. But this showdown? Oh, this was different. It was calm, it was controlled, it was surgical, and still somehow chaotic enough to make you grab popcorn. Welch walked in with receipts, literal flight logs, photos, and enough documentation to make the Library of Congress feel insecure. Meanwhile, Patel showed up with excuses that were wobblier than a folding chair at a backyard barbecue.
Just at the outset, I just want to say what I think all of us believe, and that is that the political violence that is so afflicting our country, it doesn't matter whether it's from the right or the left. I mean, all of us have an obligation to fiercely advocate for our point of view. All of us have an obligation to respect people with whom we disagree. The folks we disagree with are our opponents, but they're not our enemies. And I hope all of us keep that in mind and do the best we can to set that example. I want to congratulate the FBI. I want to congratulate the Utah state and local law enforcement for the very good work that it did in apprehending the violent assailant of Charlie Kirk, and that is a terrible, terrible tragedy. Director Patel, at one point you made an announcement that the suspect was in custody. We got our man. It turned out that was not true. In fact, I think that was about 27 hours before the person now in custody was apprehended. Why did you make that statement?
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate you letting me address this. What the FBI does is not just locate and find suspects, but we also participate in eliminating subjects. And what we had at the time was a subject in custody in relation to this investigation. So in my commitment to work with the public to help identify subjects and suspects, I put that information out. And then when we interviewed him, I put out the results of that. And could I have been more careful in my verbiage and included an A subject instead of subject? Sure, in the heat of the moment, but I was doing the best I could.
In all candor, I don't quite get that, because if we have our man, that would suggest to the public that everybody can rest and relax and not then continue to provide information to local law enforcement and to you. Well, so that was a mistake.
I don't see it as a mistake. I see it as something working with the public to identify that there was a subject in custody.
If you put out a statement that says we've got our man, and in fact it turns out that you didn't have your man, that's not a mistake?
But that's not what I said.
Well, I'll go on. That's my understanding. A second thing that is really important in the FBI, but it's important in every agency, is that the folks who are doing good work get supported for the work they're doing. And a number of highly successful FBI agents have been let go. And I want to just ask you a little bit about that. You know who Brian Driscoll is, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay. And my understanding is he served at the FBI for over 18 years. You agree?
I believe that's accurate.
Special agent in charge of the Newark office. He was commander of the FBI's hostage rescue team. That's a very prestigious and responsible position, correct?
It is.
Section chief of the Critical Incident Response Group's tactical section. You've got to be pretty good to get that high responsibility. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
He oversaw 55 SWAT teams, and they're like the elite of the elite, right? They go in to the dangerous situations, right? He got a Medal of Valor for his participation in a raid on ISIS terrorist Abu Sayyaf, who had kidnapped American citizens Kyla Mueller, right? Mueller? Is that right?
I know.
You're in agreement, right?
I know Kayla Mueller's family, yes. I know the situation.
Okay, and he got Kurt Meyer, somebody who had barricaded himself in a bar after he killed 4 people and wounded 2. And Driscoll was part of the team that went in there and took that guy out, right?
I don't have all the details, but I'll take your word for it, Senator.
And he got into trouble when Emil Bove demanded a list of FBI agents who investigated January 6th and was apprehensive that what did happen ultimately would happen, and that is those folks would get fired. I mean, do you agree with me that a boss who stands up for his subordinates when they did the job that was asked of them is a stand-up person and somebody to be admired?
Generally speaking, yes, sir.
Pardon me?
Generally speaking, yes, sir.
But Driscoll got fired, right?
Again, that matter is under litigation, and the matter you referenced occurred before I was
Okay, but
director.
let's just keep it really narrow here. He's fired, right?
Yes, he was terminated.
And he has to be, there's somebody communicates to him that he's terminated, correct?
That's my job.
That's your job. So you communicated to him that he was fired.
I did.
So, I have a hard time with this because that record suggests to me that this person is like worthy of consideration for the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and he got fired.
But there's also a record of other information that was available, and now that this matter is pending litigation, we will get that out in due course. But as you can agree,
so you've got, quote, other information that you see as a valid basis to fire somebody who, from what I can tell, had an absolutely outstanding record and who crossed the threshold of getting in trouble because he was standing up for agents serving under him who did work that was assigned to them that happened to be related to the January 6th uprising.
again, you're correlating based on your information the reasons for his termination, and I'm telling you.
No, that's right. Let me ask you another question. When you were here, you were rightly critical, not here actually, I guess it was on Cash's Corner. You were rightly critical of the way that the previous FBI director used the FBI jet. And you said you wanted to ground Chris Wray's private jet travel that he pays for with taxpayer dollars to hop around the country. Let me ask you this. On the weekend of, according to flight tracker data, on the weekend of March 7th, an FBI plane flew round trip from D.C. to Las Vegas, and you attended a UFC fight with Mel Gibson. And I'll show you that. Is that you, and is that true?
Yeah, you want to know the difference? I live in Las Vegas. I'm allowed to go home. I didn't leave a congressional hearing early on an FBI jet to dodge questions.
All right. Then on April 5th, you attended a hockey game in New York City. You don't live there, right?
No, I don't.
By the way, everyday FBI agents who are assigned in Washington don't get to fly home on a private jet.
Well, this is a great point. Do you know why I have to use a private jet? Because Congress made it mandatory.
Okay. In April 5th, well, we didn't make it mandatory that you go to UFC games with Mel Gibson.
Are you telling me I can't go home?
You got to use some judgment here.
So when I'm at home, I can't do what I'm doing when I go home. Everybody else is allowed to go home, just not me.
Let me keep going. No, I'm glad you go home. Okay. I love to go home. But I don't go home on a private jet. On April 5th,
they're not mandated to do so.
You attended a hockey game in New York City with Wayne Gretzky. And Flight Tracker says the FBI jet took you to and from New York City, where you don't live, right?
That's correct.
And on April 12th, on the following weekend, you attended a UFC a fight in Miami, also on the FBI jet, right?
That's correct.
So what's the cost to the taxpayer for those 3 flights?
But I pay the commercial equivalent per the regs and the law. And so just so you know, when you are comparing me to prior directors.
I asked what the cost was, and you don't know, I take it.
Yeah, and what I've done with the use of the private jet is use Andrews Air Force Base versus Reagan National as what the other directors have done to save the taxpayer dollars.
Bottom line here, you flew home to Las Vegas. There's nobody else in the FBI who gets paid. They have to pay their own way if they want to go home, right? I mean, right?
Well, that's not accurate. Depending on where you're stationed, the FBI covers the bill to get home.
So are you telling me that FBI agents who are assigned in Washington, but who may live in Charlotte, they get paid by the FBI to
Sometimes they do, yes.
All right. Another thing I want to say is this. our local law enforcement has been stiffed. About $500 million in cop grants have been taken out of the budget. Those really help us in Burlington. They help us in Rutland. They really are important. And why in the world would we be cutting those cop grants when we need that local law enforcement, in part to partner with you?
Well, I think
you support that?
I think you're speaking to the Department of Justice grants, which I don't adjudicate, but also Vermont, just like every other state, has received a plus-up of FBI personnel.
Well, I'll tell you, that's not what we're seeing. The other thing, my understanding is that there's a requisition or an effort to get another plane for the FBI that would cost about $72 million. Is that right?
That's inaccurate. The FBI, because the jet, as you call it, is not my jet. We use it for operational needs. We use it for FTOX. We use it for HRT.
But that's the one you fly in, right?
We have multiple fixed-wing assets, and one of them is on a wildly expensive lease that I deemed a waste of money, and I'm looking for a replacement in which the government can procure assets permanently.
Well, I would welcome you submitting to this committee the cost information about the jets that are under consideration. And according to our research, the specifications that are included in this request would result in an expenditure of between $72 million and $80 million.
That's inaccurate, but I'll happily get you the right numbers.
I welcome getting the specific information.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
So today, buckle up as we break down the top 10 most savage moments where Senator Welch professionally but absolutely ruthlessly dismantled Kash Patel live on camera, leaving taxpayers wondering, we paid for what? Senator Welch starts off with a tone that's more civil than Sunday morning coffee. He talks about political violence, mutual respect, disagreeing without dehumanizing, classic grown-up energy rarely seen in modern politics. But under that calm delivery, you can feel the subtle electricity in the room. He builds this foundation not to be polite, but to make crystal clear that accountability doesn't require shouting, finger-pointing, or throwing microphones. It just requires honesty, clarity, and a little backbone. By reminding everyone that political opponents aren't enemies, Welch sets a baseline of American democratic values, values that make everything he says next hit even harder. Because when the vibe starts this reasonable, anything corrupt, contradictory, or dishonest sticks out like a neon sign in a blackout. But if Patel thought this peaceful opening meant an easy conversation, nope. The heat was just starting. This was Patel's first major faceplant, and Welch made sure millions of Americans saw it. After the violent attack on Charlie Kirk, Patel publicly announced, "We got our man," signaling that the case was basically closed. Problem? They didn't have the actual suspect, not even close. It took another full day to catch the right person. So Welch asks a straightforward question. Why did you say that? Patel walks around the answer like he's pacing in an airport terminal waiting for a delayed flight, redefining terms, stretching semantics, calling the suspect a subject, and basically avoiding the simple phrase, "I messed up." This wasn't just a slip, it was misinformation sent out at a crucial moment. And Welch maintaining his calm tone makes Patel's explanation look like someone trying to patch a hole in a sinking boat with chewing gum. And if Patel hoped the conversation would drift away from accountability here, nope. The heat was just starting. Welch shifts gears to talk about Brian Driscoll, a name that carries serious weight within the FBI. Driscoll isn't just a random agent. He's the kind of guy Hollywood bases action heroes on. Hostage rescue team leader, commander of tactical operations, Medal of Valor recipient, oversaw 55 SWAT teams, the best of the best trained for the worst of the worst. So Welch asks, very reasonably, how does a decorated hero like this get fired? Patel leans on the oldest Washington shield, pending litigation. But here's the kicker. The firing happened after Driscoll refused to hand over the names of FBI agents who worked on January 6th because he feared retaliation. Welch doesn't accuse, he simply connects the dots. And when those dots form a picture, it isn't a pretty one. Patel's answers aren't answers at all. They're detours. And if that wasn't unsettling enough, the next fact hits with the force of a tactical team reaching a door. Welch lays out the scenario. Driscoll resists turning over agent names, fearing political targeting, and then he gets fired. Welch doesn't speculate. He just presents the timeline, which speaks for itself. Patel repeatedly denies direct connection, hides behind other information and additional considerations, but provides zero actual details. It's like watching someone say, "I have the evidence," but refusing to show even one pixel of it. This moment underscores something bigger. Leadership requires transparency, especially in federal law enforcement. And Welch highlights how firing an elite agent without a clear explanation undermines trust not only inside the FBI, but across the entire justice system. The audience can see Patel tightening up physically. You can practically hear the metaphorical seatbelt sign turning on. But the hearing was about to switch from personnel issues to Patel's now infamous air miles. Welch asks Patel directly, "Did you take the FBI jet to Las Vegas for a UFC fight with Mel Gibson?" Patel says yes, but quickly adds that he lives in Vegas. Great, but the jet, still federal property, still powered by taxpayer dollars, still not supposed to be used like a personal weekend shuttle. Welch's expression stays neutral, but the subtext is loud. Nobody cares where you live, they care who paid for the flight. Patel pivots into moral whataboutism about prior FBI directors, but Welch doesn't engage in the distraction. This is about the jet, and only the jet. At this point, viewers at home are already muttering, "Bro, seriously?" And then Welch pulls up the next trip, and this one's even harder for Patel to wave away. The FBI jet's next recorded stop? New York City, for a hockey game. Welch asks whether he lives there. He doesn't. Patel tries another round of justification, suggesting Congress-mandated jet usage for security. Welch, again unmoved, reminds him that regular FBI agents don't get private flights home ever. Patel counters with a technicality about some agents having travel covered, but not via private government planes. You can feel the room tilt as Welch lands the point. Taxpayers shouldn't be funding luxury travel for government officials to sporting events. But this wasn't a one-off or a two-off, because the travel list was just getting warmed up. Welch, did you take the FBI jet to Miami for another UFC event? Patel says, that's correct. 3 luxury trips, 3 sporting events, 3 taxpayer-funded flights, and Welch wants numbers. Hard numbers. Patel says he pays the commercial equivalent, which is vague enough to mean anything from economy saver to first-class champagne seating. And the key detail, Patel still doesn't know the actual cost of the jet flights. For taxpayers watching, this was the jaw-drop moment. But believe it or not, this still wasn't the knockout punch. The next part exposes a brutal funding contrast. Welch highlights that over $500 million in local police grants were cut nationwide. These grants support officer staffing, training, equipment, and crisis response. Meanwhile, the FBI's leadership enjoys elite travel standards. Welch practically asks the silent national question, how does this make sense? Patel deflects again, saying Vermont got more FBI personnel, but totally sidesteps the reality that police departments across the country are being starved while the FBI's leadership enjoys elite travel standards. It's a contrast so sharp you could cut steel with it. And now, the most expensive moment of the entire hearing. Welch brings out research showing the FBI is pursuing a new plane costing $72 to $80 million. Patel immediately says it's inaccurate, but can't provide the correct numbers. What he does admit is the FBI is replacing an aircraft because the current one has a wildly expensive lease. Welch stays on message. Show us the receipts. No drama, no shouting, just show us the receipts. When your credibility is already on thin ice, saying that's inaccurate, but I can't tell you the real cost right now isn't exactly reassuring. And finally, after all the dodges, detours, and verbal tap dancing, came the closing strike. Welch ends with a point every taxpayer understands instinctively. Accountability isn't optional. When FBI leadership gives misinformation, fires elite agents without transparency, cuts critical grants, and then uses federal planes for personal events, something is fundamentally broken.
Welch's final tone is almost disappointed, not angry, which somehow makes it hit harder. The contrast between leadership responsibility and luxury misuse is undeniable. Patel had explanations. Welch had facts. That's why this moment went viral, because good oversight doesn't require theatrics. It requires courage. If you're tired of political doublespeak, tired of taxpayer dollars being treated like personal perks, tired of leaders who dodge instead of answer, then this is your moment to step up. Hit that like, subscribe, and drop a comment below telling us, should FBI leadership have unrestricted access to private jets? Should Congress demand more transparency? And which moment from today made you shout, "Bro, seriously?" This channel is built for people who want the real deal. Sharp analysis, bold commentary, and zero sugarcoating. So join the community, stay informed, stay loud, and let's keep shining a bright American spotlight on the stories others bury. Your engagement isn't just support, it's fuel. Let's keep going.